The freedom they never thought they'd find. Not every prison has bars. Some are hidden behind palace walls. Some are hidden behind luxurious mansions. Some are hidden behind smiles that convince the world everything is perfect. But one thing is certain: no darkness lasts forever. Sometimes freedom begins the moment you decide to stop living in fear. The morning after Leslie's wedding, the three best friends hugged each other tightly. None of them wanted to say goodbye again. This time, however, things felt different. They were no longer carrying their burdens alone. They had promised to stand by one another, no matter what. Noni was the first to leave. As her plane landed back in Ghana, she looked out of the window and smiled softly. For the first time since becoming queen, she wasn't returning because she had no choice. She was returning because she wanted to see what the future could become. As she walked through the airport terminal, she was surprised to see King Pulumi waiting for her with a bouquet of her favorite flowers. He smiled warmly. "I thought my queen deserved a proper welcome home." Noni couldn't stop herself from smiling. It was such a simple gesture, yet it touched her heart. Pulumi took her hand and led her to a beautifully decorated vintage car waiting outside. Instead of driving back to the palace, he took her to a quiet hill overlooking the kingdom. A table had been prepared beneath fairy lights. Traditional musicians played softly in the background, while servants quietly disappeared, leaving them alone. "I wanted tonight to be about us," Pulumi said. "No royal duties, no meetings, just you and me." For the first time, Noni looked at her husband without resentment. She saw a patient man, a gentle man, a man who had never forced her to love him. Instead, he had waited. Dinner turned into hours of conversation. They laughed, shared childhood stories, spoke about their fears, their dreams, their responsibilities. After dinner, they walked hand in hand through the palace gardens beneath the moonlight. The silence between them no longer felt uncomfortable. When Pulumi reached for her hand, Noni didn't pull away. Instead, she held it tighter. She finally whispered, "I think I've been unfair to you." Pulumi smiled gently. "We've both been learning." That night, Noni made a decision. She would stop running from the life she had been. Weeks later, Noni packed her belongings and quietly moved into the royal chamber she now shared with Pulumi. The palace servants smiled as they watched the young queen slowly settle into her new life. The laughter that had once disappeared from the palace halls slowly returned. Pulumi remained the same patient, loving husband he had always been. He never tried to change Noni. He simply loved her. And for the first time, Noni allowed herself to love him back. Months passed. One morning, Noni walked into the royal gardens holding a small wooden box. Her hands trembled. Inside was a tiny pair of baby shoes. Pulumi looked at her curiously. "What is this?" Noni smiled through tears. "You should open it." As soon as he saw the tiny shoes, his eyes widened. He looked at her. "Does this mean—" Noni nodded happily. "We're going to have a baby." Pulumi lifted her into the air with joy. The news spread through the kingdom within hours. The people celebrated in the streets. Traditional dancers filled the palace courtyard. Drums echoed across the kingdom. The king announced 7 days of celebration, thanking God for blessing the royal family with an heir. Months later, Pulumi organized a magnificent baby shower inside the palace gardens. Everything was decorated in gold, white, and soft green. Fresh flowers covered every table. Musicians played beautiful melodies while guests celebrated. Among the honored guests were Leslie and Mpumi. When they arrived at the palace, they couldn't believe what they were seeing. The palace was even more breathtaking than they had imagined. Noni walked toward them, wearing an elegant maternity gown and a radiant smile. She hugged them tightly. "I can't believe this is your life," Leslie laughed. Mpumi smiled warmly. "And your husband adores you." Nani looked across the garden where Pulumi was greeting guests. "He really does." She smiled. "I almost walked away from the greatest blessing God had prepared for me." The 3 friends laughed together, grateful that at least one of them had found true happiness. But Mpumi's battle was far from over.
After Leslie's wedding, Leslie convinced Mpumi to delay her return to Germany for a few more days. Mpumi told Sebastian that she wants to go and visit her family as she hasn't seen them in years. Sebastian was skeptical, but ended up agreeing as long as she called him 3 times a day and let him know about her whereabouts. "There is someone I want you to meet," Leslie said. The next morning, they drove for several hours into a quiet rural village. Hidden among tall trees stood a small prayer house where a respected elderly priest was known for counseling people who felt trapped by darkness. The old priest welcomed them kindly. Before Mpumi could explain anything, he looked at her with great concern. He quietly closed his eyes and prayed. After several moments, he opened them again. "My child, there is a heavy darkness surrounding you." Mpumi's heart raced. "You know?" "I don't need anyone to tell me." He looked at her gently. "But remember this. No darkness is greater than God." The priest gave Mpumi careful instructions. For 7 days, pray faithfully every day at 6 o'clock in the evening and again at 12 midnight. Ask God to strengthen you and protect your child. When the 7 days are complete, return to Germany. Act exactly as you always have. Do not let anyone know that you are preparing to leave. After 3 days, go to the forbidden room. There is a small wooden box inside. Open it. You will find a red scarf. Take it. Burn it. When you do, the power that has kept you trapped will be broken. Then leave immediately with your child. And whatever happens, do not look back. Mpumi listened carefully, determined to follow every instruction. For 7 days, she prayed without missing a single prayer. Every evening at 6, every midnight. She prayed for courage. She prayed for wisdom. She prayed for her little boy. When the 7th day ended, she boarded a flight back to Germany. Sebastian welcomed her as if nothing had happened. She smiled, she cooked, she laughed, she acted exactly as before. No one suspected anything. 3 days later, while everyone else was occupied elsewhere in the mansion, Mpumi quietly walked down the familiar hallway.
Her heart pounded as she reached the forbidden door. She opened it. The room was exactly as she remembered. Ignoring her fear, she searched carefully until she found an old wooden box hidden beneath a dusty table. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside lay a folded red scarf. Then it hit her. The scarf was hers. She quickly took it outside to a fireplace and set it alight. Within moments, the scarf burned into ashes. A strange heaviness that had filled the mansion seemed to disappear. Mpumi wasted no time. She picked up her son, collected the bags she secretly packed a day before, and quietly left the mansion. She never looked back. No one stopped her. No one followed. She and her son were free. Sebastian returned home and immediately sensed something was wrong. The house felt unusually quiet. He rushed upstairs to their bedroom. It was empty. He searched every room, calling Mpumi's name. Then he looked into his son's nursery. The crib was empty. His heart sank. "Mpumi!" he shouted as his voice echoed through the mansion. He ordered the staff to search the entire estate, but there was no sign of her or their child. For the first time in years, Sebastian realized he had truly lost them. As the days passed, he became consumed by grief and obsession. He barely slept. He stopped eating properly. He wandered through the mansion, calling Mpumi's name and staring at old family photographs of her and their son. Every room reminded him of the family he had lost. The once confident businessman slowly lost his peace of mind. He couldn't stop thinking about Mpumi and their little boy. The mansion that once seemed grand became unbearably empty. Then, everything else began to fall apart. Authorities launched a major financial investigation into the family's businesses. Years of hidden financial crimes were uncovered. Sebastian's parents and several close relatives were arrested and charged with large-scale money embezzlement and financial fraud. Their companies collapsed. Their wealth was frozen. Properties were seized. The powerful family that had once seemed untouchable lost almost everything. The mansion that had been filled with luxury became a symbol of their downfall. Sebastian was left alone, surrounded only by memories of the life he could never get back. Meanwhile, in South Africa, life continued to blossom. But life was not easy at first. The little money Mpumi had managed to save would not last forever. Instead of giving up, she decided to start a small clothing business. She designed beautiful dresses inspired by African fashion. She sold them online and at local markets. Customers loved her work. Word spread quickly. Within a year, Mpumi's clothing business grew beyond anything she had imagined. Her boutique expanded into several locations, creating jobs for many women in her community. She raised her son in a home filled with love, peace, and faith, grateful every day for the second chance she had been given. Leslie and Adrian's marriage continued to flourish. Not long after celebrating their first wedding anniversary, Leslie discovered she was expecting their first child. Adrian was overjoyed. He embraced her tightly and promised to be the loving father he had always dreamed of becoming. Their family celebrated the wonderful news, and Leslie couldn't wait to begin the next chapter of her life as a mother. In Ghana, Queen Noni and King Pulumi had become beloved rulers. Their first child brought great joy to the kingdom, and not long afterward, the royal palace celebrated once again when Noni announced she was expecting their second baby. The entire kingdom rejoiced. Traditional dancers filled the palace courtyards, music echoed through the streets, and families celebrated alongside their king and queen. Noni often smiled when she remembered the frightened young woman who had once tried to run away from the palace. Now she looked at Pulumi with love and gratitude. The man she never wanted to marry had become her greatest companion and closest friend. Several years later, the three lifelong friends reunited once again. Mpumi arrived with her cheerful son. Leslie arrived with Adrian and their beautiful baby. Queen Noni arrived with King Pulumi, their young child, and another little one growing safely beneath her heart. The three women embraced tightly. This time, there were no tears of fear, only tears of gratitude. Leslie smiled warmly. "We've come a long way." Nani nodded. "We learned that happiness isn't about having a perfect life." Mpumi looked at her friends and then at the children laughing together. "It's about having people who never stop believing in you." As the sun slowly set, they watched their children play together. Their journeys had been different. Their struggles had been painful. But together, they had found healing, friendship, and hope. And they knew that no matter where life would take them next, their friendship would remain their greatest treasure. The end.